investigating an insurrection.
There was an attack carried out on January 6th, and a hitman sent them. I want you to get to the bottom of that.
Officers recount stories of beatings and mayhem at a hearing into the U.S. Capitol riots. Are Republicans downplaying what happened that day, and will lawmakers hold the instigators to account? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is the investigation into the U.S. Capitol riots. Armed insurrection and even an attempted coup are just a few of the ways people have described the events of January 6th. What began with an incendiary speech by President Donald Trump during his Save America rally near the White House turned into the worst violent scene at the Capitol since the British invasion of 1812. Now, one officer described the clashes between Capitol Hill police and rioters as nothing short of brutal. The mob stormed the Capitol as lawmakers met to certify Joe Biden's win. 4 people died during the riots. 140 officers were injured. Officer Brian Sicknick, who collapsed after facing off with pro-Trump rioters, died the next day, having suffered multiple strokes. 535 people now face criminal charges. Former President Trump was impeached for the second time in February for incitement of insurrection. A Democrat-led House Select Committee has been formed to investigate the riot, despite opposition from Republicans who downplay the attack, calling the hearings politically motivated. Now, the committee, 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans, heard the highly emotional testimony from the officers left to defend the Capitol on the 6th of January. We will hear their stories in just a minute, but first, Zainab Zara takes a look at the 3 hours that changed a nation.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt.
Now, out of the hundreds of officers that defended the Capitol that day, 4 appeared in front of the House Select Committee this week. They described the frenzied mob as terrorists wielding a variety of weapons, including sledgehammers and chemical sprays, and screaming everything from pro-Trump slogans to racial slurs. Here are some of their stories.
Directly in front of me, a man seized the opportunity of my vulnerability, grabbed the front of my gas mask, and used it to beat my head against the door. He switched to pulling it off my head, the straps stretching against my skull and straining my neck. He never uttered any words I recognized, but opted instead for guttural screams. I remember him foaming at the mouth. I knew I couldn't sustain much more damage and remain upright. At best, I would collapse and be a liability to my colleagues. At worst, be dragged out into the crowd and lynched. Unable to move or otherwise signal the officers behind me that I needed to fall back, I did the only thing that I could do and screamed for help.
What we were suggested that day was like something from a medieval battle. We fought hand to hand, inch by inch, to prevent an invasion of the Capitol by a violent mob intent on subverting our democratic process. I could feel myself losing oxygen and recall thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die, defending this entrance.
One woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo!"
I was grabbed, beaten, tased, all while being called a traitor to my country. I was at risk of being stripped of and killed with my own firearm as I heard chants of kill him with his own gun. I could still hear those words in my head today. I was electrocuted again and again and again with a taser. I'm sure I was screaming, but I don't think I could even hear my own voice. I feel like I went to hell and back to protect them and the people in this room. But too many are now telling me that hell doesn't exist, or that hell actually wasn't that bad. The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful.
Joining me now from Washington to look deeper at the hearings underway is Reena Shah, a political advisor and commentator, and self-described as a never-Trump Republican. She is also the CEO of Relax Strategies. From Philadelphia is public policy expert Michael Johns, the co-founder of the Tea Party movement, and he's also the former White House speechwriter for George H.W. Bush. And from Elliott City, Maryland, Jason Nichols, Democratic strategist and senior lecturer in African American Studies at the University of Maryland College Park. Thanks all so much for being with us. It has been 6 months, and so much of the discussion around what happened on January 6th has been politicized. But the testimony of these Capitol officers on the front lines, their tears, all the emotion. Reena, has it changed the game? Is this now about fellow Americans rather than political parties?
Well, I'd like to think that half a year would make such a great difference, but as Officer Harry Dunn put it, time has gone on essentially, but nothing has changed. Everything's different, but nothing has changed. And he said those words during his emotional testimony that gripped me at the heart. It's really difficult to go through those officers' words, whether you read them or heard them, and not feel some kind of way. If you're somebody that's grown up admiring law enforcement in this country like I have, and really admiring what they do every day, sacrificing and really putting their lives on the line. Let's not forget, lives were lost on January 6th. When I see those officers, I see faces that I remember seeing every morning when I went into the House office buildings as a young staffer 10 years ago. It is difficult to hear their words because what they went through was not something that any American thought could happen here. Maybe there was a small segment of America that thought, surely this is the way to do things. But in general, most of us are raised up to know that peaceful protest, I'm sorry, it's just emotional. I mean, peaceful protest, not violent protest, is what we are about as a country, as a people. And to watch that rioting, to know that people's bodies were smashed, electrocuted, experienced heart attacks, lost eyeballs. What are we doing as a country but to investigate and get to the bottom of what happened? We owe it to our law enforcement, we owe it to each other, and frankly, we will not be able to move on as a country until we get some real answers on who was responsible, who sent these people there. Most of us have an idea, but we haven't agreed on it as a country.
Okay. Michael Johns, as a Trump supporter, a Tea Party founder, and someone who has also worked in the U.S. Capitol, were you moved by that testimony?
I feel it's understandable in the sense that you have officers who are not accustomed to that magnitude of disruption. They did lose some of their colleagues, not through murder or killings, through sort of related other health incidents. Only one person was killed that day. That was Ashley Babbitt, the pro-Trump supporter, a former U.S. military member that Democrats show almost no interest in learning about. And, if you really watch the video of her shooting, it appears to me to be entirely arbitrary. And after a year and a half of hearing the left talk about police or law enforcement killing unarmed civilians, which is what happened here, it seems to me that we're due some answers. Additionally, I don't know about the tears of my colleague here who just got done talking, or what her positions were, but if you were moved to tears about January 6th, which has been in my judgment, it was ill-advised, and I spent this entire 2020 election cycle since our Tea Party movement talking about how there's no room for violence in American politics. But the violence in American politics is almost uniformly on the left, and they aren't saying a word about it.
It's
Just to finish this, 19 people killed by Black Lives Matter and their affiliated street riots. Over $2 billion of property damage.
Okay.
Where are the tears for the 19?
Oh my goodness! Please don't.
It's interesting how the perspective very much changes. We're talking about
You have no right to ever talk about my experience. Ever. Please stop right now. You must stop, because you have no right to ever take my tears and try to equate them. You don't know who I've cried for and when I've cried, and that is wrong of you to try to and equate. No, you did not. You wanted to bring BLM into this.
By saying I have no idea.
You show exactly who you are, sir. Those of you who bring Ashley Babbitt's name into this, a criminal, somebody who is trying to commit a felony, you show exactly who you are. We don't need to debate.
Aware of that?
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to interrupt it there. Michael Johns, if we can, I'd really like to keep the focus as much as possible on the actual riots. And let me bring Jason into the conversation. I mean, hearing what we just heard, the exchanges there between the three of you, Jason, did January 6th actually change America, or just fully re-illustrate massive and sometimes dangerous political divides?
I think that it should have changed America, but I think all it did was expose what America is and some of the issues that we have in this country in terms of our political divisions. We just heard a whole bunch of distractions and not being able to stay on the subject and talking about all kinds of issues.
Not a distraction.
It's very interesting. Excuse me, I'm speaking. I think it's interesting even that we're calling it a riot and not an insurrection. The fact is that was an insurrection. If you look at the definition of an insurrection, that literally fits that definition. It is an uprising against a violent uprising against an authority or government. And that is what exactly happened on January 6th. And we need to discuss it that way.
It means to accomplish the goal. It was an unarmed occupation of a building.
Targeted, attacked. Excuse me, I'm speaking. I gave you an opportunity to speak. I think you should do the same.
Try to stick to what factually occurred, okay? There was not an insurrection when no one's armed.
Okay, Jason, let's let Jason finish his statement.
History 101, sir. You didn't go to History 101, Mr. Johns.
Jason, finish your statement, and Michael Johns will get back to you. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, people were armed. If he had listened to the testimony, people had bear spray. You just showed footage of people hitting people with poles and breaking windows. I don't know where he thinks that's not being armed. If I came to his house and hit him with a lead pipe, I guess because that's not a gun, that's not an arm. But I suppose people have different ideas of what armed is and what dangerous is and what violent is. And actually, some people actually testified earlier. There are 500 people with charges against them, and some of them testified to spraying chemicals at the police. It's funny how, number one, you bring up Ashley Babbitt, and I actually think that they should release the name of the man who shot Ashley Babbitt in the name of transparency.
No,
I think that
should be part of
we
this
should be
should be part of this investigation.
Consistent. And again, if Kevin McCarthy wanted testimony or to talk about some of the issues that the other guest is bringing up, he should not have taken all of the people off of this committee. He had three options to put people on these committees, and he protested by not allowing them to be on, ask these questions.
That's the first time in history of independent commissions that's been done, where you've had a member of the opposite party say that these two members were not deemed sufficiently objective.
You know what, guys? I don't want to get too far off track.
This is an absolute partisan farce utilizing.
That's on.
Let me interrupt it there. And just for the record, there's no, from all the testimony we have heard, there's actually absolutely no denial that Ashley Babbitt had been warned several times to back up. So this was not, okay, fair enough. But Michael Johns, I just need to ask you this, because I want to go back actually to what started the events of January 6th. Michael Johns, do you really believe that the election was stolen?
Let me say that when this first came up of this January 6th commission, I was hopeful that with it, because one of the starting points would be the inspiration for at least the Trump supporters. And of course, it was a hybrid of people, let's not forget that, including people who had participated in Black Lives Matter and other far left.
I'm not sure about that.
Who were violently engaged and have been arrested.
Do you believe the election was stolen or not?
I believe there's 6 states that require forensic audits, and where elected officials are demanding it. There are thousands of affidavits, and I believe, sadly and unfortunately, matter of indisputable fact, the Department of Justice has not pursued any serious investigation, which is left to these states.
Because
Maricopa County in Arizona is probably on the verge of withdrawing the certification of Arizona. Georgia, not far away. Pennsylvania, play.
This is not what I agreed to talk about today.
Right, Reena. And I would like to move on. Let me get Reena back in the conversation. My apologies. I'm going to change tact here. Reena, we're back to what is happening now in Washington, D.C. This hearing underway, and these officers are demanding that whoever instigated the events of January 6th, whatever Michael Johns wants to call them, riots, insurrection, whatever, they are demanding that someone be held responsible. They have suffered. Do you think, Reena, that they will see justice?
Well, it depends on what one's definition of justice is. To me, an independent commission should have been established, but there was a vote taken in Congress and it did not pass. And so, Mr. Johns, it's pretty funny that you used the title of your former boss, former President George H.W. Bush. He is probably rolling in his grave at your words. First of all, you come here with no fact. This is a committee established by the Speaker of the House. This is a select committee established in the House.
Who objected to 2 appointees who should have been on.
Please do not interrupt. Can you please, for one moment, listen to some facts? I'm a former congressional staffer at the senior level. I am speaking. I'm a former senior congressional staffer, and I'm attempting to explain to their audience what this is. This is not an independent commission. An independent commission didn't pass. That would have been the best thing for the American public.
Certainly, it's not. I have not used the phrase independent. In fact, that's one of the many objections.
Okay, Michael Johns, I'll come right back to you. Just let Reena finish her statement.
This gentleman speaking over me. I'm literally just trying to say this is a select committee in Congress. It is at the Speaker's discretion who to put on it. And this is exactly what Mr. Johns and others
it's not independent.
want.
There's nothing
Can you
independent
please
about it.
stop interrupting, or I'm going to have to, please excuse me.
Okay, I know
producers.
I know I encourage debate, but
No,
Michael
I'm gonna
Johns,
have
please,
to go
if you can
because
just wait.
Stephanie
Rena,
did
do
not let it
finish. My
get over.
apologies. Finish what you're saying. Go ahead.
This is a select committee in Congress established, and it is established by the speaker. She has discretion of who to put on it. And therefore, the Republicans, like Mr. Johns, want this because they want to paint this as a partisan witch hunt. They did not want an independent commission because that independent commission would have operated differently. They want to go out and say, this is Speaker Pelosi's committee. It has no Republicans other than Kinzinger and Cheney, two members of Congress, who voted for impeachment. So they want to make it seem as partisan as apparently the Republicans want. This is still what former President Trump wants. He wants to paint everything as hyper partisan. I see this committee as an opportunity to see facts, to hear with our own two ears what happened that day and draw our own conclusions. As a lifelong conservative, someone who is right of center, that is exactly how I
Okay.
was brought up, to listen to all the information and draw my own conclusion, to not listen to
But
partisan
you're not
tropes.
getting anything close to all the information.
Okay.
Pelosi herself would not even allow the Capitol Police, would not even yield to the Capitol Police's request for police testimony that they wanted included. She removed two of the Republicans who were
Okay.
appointed.
Can I let
And
Jason get in? He's
completely
been
narrowed the focus of it.
Jason has been waiting.
Major questions that aren't being asked, documents that aren't being secured, and a complete, real circus of a presentation.
Okay.
Where driven by emotion and not by anything that remotely comes close to getting
Driven by emotion, it was highly emotional, the events. Jason, go ahead. Let me give Jason a chance to talk. Michael.
It really seems like we're abandoning any level of collegiality here, which is really disappointing. When I saw that my colleague here worked for George H.W. Bush, I really thought he was going to be professional when he came on here. Instead, he's just going and insulting everyone and speaking. But I'll just say this before he gets back to that. This is a bipartisan effort, and it needs to be acknowledged as such. Liz Cheney voted with Donald Trump 92% of the time. When you make a comparison with Liz Cheney and Elise Stefanik, who is going to replace Liz Cheney in her post, she voted with President Trump 77% of the time. So Liz Cheney
it's not bipartisan because when you remove the Republican appointees, you make it partisan.
Okay. It seemed, from an objective perspective, it didn't seem at all possible to make this the partisan committee that was originally required.
Two of McCarthy's 5 appointees,
okay.
2/5 of the appointees were removed. That makes it partisan.
Michael, we're down to our last few minutes. And I just have to say, as an observer here on this panel, as the moderator, it pains me to see the clashes between the three of you. Reena is a Republican, John, you are a Republican, Jason, you are not, but the fact that you see things this dramatically differently, what hope is there for the United States of America? Our title on this is Can Capitol Hearings Heal America? I think the three of you have demonstrated why that might be impossible. Michael Johns, do you hold out any hope?
I have not demonstrated that. I've demonstrated nothing but professionalism.
I'm just saying the differences in opinion here. Reena, this isn't a personal, please, Reena, this is not a personal criticism. I'm talking about the severe differences in opinion.
And I'm American, but I do not want to interact with this kind of human that is not professional and not speaking in truth. We all saw video. This isn't just about emotion and us getting upset for no reason. There is video.
We've had attacks on the Capitol, by the way, 1971, 1954, 1983, we had 4 killed in the Puerto Rican terror attacks in the Capitol. This was a very unfortunate incident. I want to make it clear, and I have condemned it.
Michael Johns, do you feel good about the United States of America today? Do you feel it is a functional democracy and that this is how the government should function to represent the freedoms and democracies that the United States is supposed to be about?
Well, no, I think we have major questions as it relates to November 3 that need to be answered factually to everyone's satisfaction. And in the absence of that happening, it doesn't matter what party you're affiliated with. This is an issue that has the country torn in two because half the country is not believing in the outcome of it. And you have thousands of affidavits
you on
to
the side
support
of his
it.
head.
Three
First of all, you
three
started this
three
program
states
insulting
now
my
that have
tears, and
elected
I will
officials
never,
pursuing.
ever leave space for a voice like yours. So I will continue to talk over you
I
like
don't
you
care.
did to
I
the
honestly
both of
don't
us.
care. I'm not looking
Good.
for your
Why don't you sign off, sir?
support,
Because you're not a
endorsement,
professional.
or
They have
your
found
opinion.
you
I don't know
on
who
this
you
side of
are,
the
what
street
what
to
you've
speak to
done.
the
I'm going to
public.
cut the both of you off right now
I have
because
no
unfortunately we can't really even properly hear the
Did you
two of
vote
you
for
over the
Trump?
broad.
Let me ask you that. Vote for Trump in
He has
November?
Jason,
started
Did
this
you vote for
program
Trump?
insulting my
Did you
tears.
vote for
I'm
Trump?
she
Did
calls
you
herself a
vote?
never Trump Republican, Michael.
Yeah,
I
all
think
right.
that was clear from the very beginning. Jason, we have 40 seconds left. I'm going to give you the final words. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we're seeing is that we are detached from reality. Some people in America are detached from reality. I think it's part of this is the media's responsibility. And Andrea, I love you. I love this program. I love this network. But I think that you've got to bring on people who are actually devoted to the truth and not people who are just going to obfuscate and sit here and in
I'm
some
not
cases
obfuscating on
lie.
anything.
I think
I
we've
am
got to.
saying
Okay.
What happened?
Jason, I hear you. What we wanted to bring on were people that actually represented different contingents of the United States of America. And this is actually, Michael does represent a number of American voters, as unfortunate as it seems for you. And I have to say, you've really demonstrated what the dynamic, unfortunately, in the United States is about today. So I'd like to thank you, though, at this point, all three of you, so much for joining us on a very emotional debate. And thanks our viewers, of course, for tuning in as well. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at @the_newsmakers and let us know what you think. We appreciate all your comments. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.